welcome everybody to a session with the Boost Live on podcast. A special thanks to our sponsors, to Boost, for their support this week. Now I'll pass the mic over to Leon to lead us on.
Hello. Ooh, it's cool. Okay, so we're going to do live podcast. I think today's topic is actually, what, is it, or is that tomorrow?
I think it's today.
That's what we're doing today.
The show moved a couple times, so in my defense.
Invest in community, that's what we're rolling with.
We all love community.
And everybody here is a part of a community, so Pablo is very, very swagged out, and he's got Venture Lab.
Repping Venture Lab, there you go.
He's got that. We've got him in the Geekdom mentor community. He's part of the Trinity mentor community, and then he's going to Mexico as part of the delegation with AIM, TechBlock, and the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. Mm-hmm. So a lot of involvement in the community in that perspective. Then we've got Zach here, and I'll give a little intro, and then you guys can explain yourselves a little bit more. Zach's he's involved in everything. He's got Nonprofits HQ. He's helping nonprofits figure out some pretty complex issues and managing how to run the organizations. He is in every panel. If we can get him to talk, he will talk. And he's running a lot of programs. Like there's a number of events I've just seen you hosting and shepherding along. And then we've got Lawrence here, who's really involved in the New Tech Alliance, or the
San Antonio New Tech.
San Antonio New Tech.
Which Zach is my partner in crime with that.
So trying to make it an alliance. But he understands a lot of the perspective of reviving that, bringing it back, and then also he's a mentor at Geekdom. And anything else?
I'm also a board treasurer with Emerging Rise, which is an organization that's a business incubator and trying to help focus on SMB especially.
Okay, very nice. So, Zach, do you want to add anything to your part? I undersold you.
Yeah, no worries. So that was pretty much the gist of it, but essentially what I've been focused on since coming to San Antonio, I am a transplant from Phoenix, but what I've been really focused on is building that community of startup founders and really uniting the ecosystem to make it a productive, successful place for companies to grow. And a large section of that is like mentoring through the Geekdom network. I'm also joining Pablo on the TechBlock delegation to Mexico City. All those different things that really unite people, bring people together, and help us collaboratively build success for everybody that's building and working right here in San Antonio.
I love it, and you're always willing to help. Like every part of this is somebody comes to you, and I see it all the time. I'm across the hall from him in our co-working space there at Geekdom, and people are always coming and asking him to be involved in the community, and I never hear no. I hear yes, or hey, I've got this other event, which is unique because you are a transplant. You did benefit obviously a lot from what they've built here. But you are giving back more than you've taken, in my opinion.
And I think that's key. And it's totally not just me either. I think that's key, right? Every ecosystem has a lot of give and take. We need to find the resources that we need to build successfully, but we also need to give back to that and ensure that future generations of companies or organizations that are coming to San Antonio or thinking about San Antonio are able to be successful as well. So think about the things that we don't have or that we wish we had, and let's put them in place for the next generation of founders.
So one thing I'd say is just in general, first of all, Zach flew in like a comet, okay, just ball of fire. And he's been here, he's engaged. He's not just simply being a face that people get to know, and you could ride the fanfare if you wanted to, but he's not. He's putting in the most valuable asset that he and all of us in this room have, and that's our time. We keep forgetting, we keep thinking that money is the only thing that makes the world go around. The fact of the matter is our time is the most valuable thing that we can offer to each of us, right? And I hate to make it sound like, that sounds so kumbaya, but the fact of the matter is how many people in this room have had a couple of pennies or maybe not even 2 pennies to rub together? It's happened many, many times in my life, and I'll tell you, time and support and the bridges that have nothing to do with the economics are what got me through. And I think it's the kind of thing that as you start finding that success, you recognize that your time is the most valuable thing you can offer, and just be willing to do it in whatever small way you can, and it will make a huge difference to the community at large. We all benefit from that.
One of the things I'd like to add too, I'm a multi-generational Texan. I've been here since 1850s. Our family never left. We didn't explore out other than one sibling in my family who's gone on to California. 99% of the rest of us from all the generations have stayed here. From working with Zach a lot through SA New Tech and through mentoring together at Geekdom, just knowing him and his character, one of the things I can say is one of the reasons why he's most successful too is he understands this very well, and he wants to fit in here, and he wants to expand what we have here. He sees the gaps in our marketplace not as a weakness in our character, what's been holding us back, but as things that we need to build together to push us forward. And I 100% agree with his optimistic perspective of growth, and that we can focus on what we can do to move the change forward. Definitely looking at where the gaps are, but doing it together.
And I think that's why, like, you and I are paired so well with the SA New Tech stuff and, like, the things that we're working on together. Like, Lawrence is probably one of the most diplomatic and methodical people that I have ever met, and he likes to, like, think things through very well, and he builds relationships, he cultivates them, and he protects those. And then I'm like, let's get shit done. Like, let's bulldoze through everything and get stuff done. And I think that's why you and I are paired so well together, because you've been able to, on a few things at this point, be able to kind of keep me a little more diplomatic in the situations where we need to be. And then I've been able to help kind of like push us a little further along in areas where it makes more sense.
Sometimes you do just need to break a few dishes, that's the truth of the matter, right? Especially in entrepreneurship, that's a huge part of what we do, execute and iterate. I think for my part, some of it is like just where I've fallen flat on my face before too. Like, okay, maybe down this path, we'll probably fall again. So it helps a little bit looking at that perspective. But I think one of the things I value about how we get along is I think we have an interesting, similar view of business in general. Like, everything, like from early days when we met, like we were aligned with a lot of, different various choices that you can make in business.
Well, one thing that you said, Zach, and you mentioned it too, Lawrence, but nobody talked about it really, is those conversations you are having about the gaps in San Antonio. It's the valley of death. I think San Antonio Startup Week has helped talk about it. You've brought those things, but in those perspectives, you're the squeaky wheel to help facilitate those. You're bringing that in and saying there is a gap in what San Antonio is right now. The startup community has come a long way from before even 300 Main was here and it was a parking lot. It's progressed, and it's because people stay in the community, they continue to contribute, they continue to mentor, and then Tech Block is facilitating these trips to Mexico. You've got Geekdom running the Startup Boot Camp, the Pre-Accelerator, and then the other program. What is it? It's the Boot Camp, the Accelerator.
It's the incubator. Pre-Accelerator.
There we go.
Yeah. Crawl, stagger, walk around.
Yes, which is now the next gap is that valley of death, and actually raising money, actually building a sustainable business, and the way and path to do it is through a community, because you are going to need, in your case, possibly through Nonprofits HQ, you're going to need channel partners. You're going to need folks to connect you with these other programs. You're going to need incubators to go connect with, especially if San Antonio is a target market and a growth potential for you.
So just a quick question for Zach. I'm also a transplant, but I'm from the East Coast. Baltimore's a little different than obviously Phoenix, but I still rep Baltimore, but I love San Antonio. I've been here 8 years, and my kids are San Antonians through and through. They've lived here more than half their lives at this point. I'm not going anywhere. But I chose San Antonio because San Antonio chose me, and I was actually excited about coming, and I had a lot of connections here before I came. Obviously, being Hispanic, this is one of the most wonderful cities to be. If you want to speak Spanish on the street for some random reason, this is the place to do it. So culturally, from the standpoint of where I came from, where Latino-centric wasn't necessarily the norm, that was something that made San Antonio special for me from a cultural standpoint. But for example, coming from Phoenix, why did you choose San Antonio, Zach?
Yeah, definitely. So to be honest, San Antonio was not on the list. It originally was on the list. Like when you're thinking about where you go to build a startup, you think the Bay Area, you think probably New York, you think Atlanta, Chicago, all these other places, Austin, which was on our list. And as we started exploring different places, we knew we couldn't find the resources that we needed in Phoenix to build what we wanted to build. And resources not just being capital. I think a lot of companies, a lot of founders get stuck on this idea of needing to raise some type of money in order to start building and in order to start doing things. But resources in terms of teaching us how to actually be business people, right? This is our first startup. We know the product space really well, and we're still learning how to actually, keep the records that we need to keep, how to have the conversations that we need to have, and then networking was very draining and something that I was awful at before. But so as we were exploring places to find those things that we need to build successfully, we were looking at Austin, which was cost prohibitive for us, right? We needed runway personally and runway professionally in order to build. San Antonio kept coming up in that search, right? As we were looking around Austin and as we were looking for places to go, San Antonio kept coming up. Resources through, Geekdom and Launch SA and Tech Block and Capital Factory, all of these things kept coming up in the research that we were doing. So we had a few boxes that we needed to check off, right? We needed to have the cost of living low enough that we could sustainably build on no dollars. We needed to have resources to help us on our weaknesses, not just the weaknesses that we've identified, but the weaknesses that we don't know we have yet, help us explore those and account for those. And then we needed a place where there was enough market for us that we could get integrated with, and San Antonio kind of checked all of those boxes, the resources through the various programs that exist, the cost of living, and then it's a very, there's a very large saturation, in this case saturation is a good term, of nonprofit organizations, which is who we support. So it checked all of those boxes, and while there's still, you mentioned the valley of death, there's still a lot of work to be done. Once you get your product built, once you get in production and start selling, San Antonio, there's still a lot of work to make it a place where companies can not just start, not just grow, but more importantly, stay. And I think it falls on the current ecosystem players, but not just them. It falls on us as founders to make those resources available and to make this an environment where startups can succeed. So I started this by saying San Antonio was not on the list of places where we thought we could go and build. So the mission now becomes, let's change that. Well, why isn't San Antonio on the list of cities where people think they can come and they can successfully build? Let's identify what those reasons are. Let's bring these conversations into public, which we've been doing a lot of throughout Startup Week this year, and let's actually turn those into actions. Let's put San Antonio on the list where people can come and build.
Very well said.
Loud cheering applause.
Yay! Lawrence.
Yeah,
You've been here forever.
Yeah.
Why do you choose to stay, I guess?
Why do I choose to stay? That's a great question, actually. I've been recruited throughout my career throughout the country. When I was spending some time with a consultant practice here in San Antonio, got recruited to go to their headquarters back off in the east. Multiple times those kind of situations arose, twofold to that. One, first and foremost, from the perspective of it's my homeland. We've been here forever. Anyone that was born in Texas understands sort of why we have a tendency more than any other state to have the highest retention rates. Like if you look at studies, part of it's just the simple answer of I'm just another native Texan. And then the other side of it is genuinely, I'm a business person. I think Zach was touching on some things and what he was talking about that really resonated with me about how we really know business fundamentals well. And Texas is really good at business fundamentals. And it's something that I know that, for example, in San Antonio, like we talked about this earlier this week, we had Data Point here in San Antonio that built the initial technology for the modern, computer. They created the first microchip processor. Intel was their builder on that. And, after that time period in the 90s, we also had Wi-Fi standards that we helped contribute to. So basically the modern computer, the Wi-Fi that we're connecting to wouldn't have existed had San Antonio not existed. Going back to my forebears, they were vaqueros and they were cowboys. And so there's the whole, cowboy ingenuity and innovation. So I've always seen San Antonio as an innovation city because of that origin and because of our roots. But I've seen it as something, one, we're not braggadocious. That's maybe a downside. So if we have successful founders, for example, they're not necessarily talking about it or sharing about it where others might and provide more visibility. But as well, I see that, if we stay, if more of us stay, that, and there's the talent here, we can build it. Like this conversation we're having right now, I argue that us, everyone in this room, everyone this week, is the future leaders that we need to come to the next level. And I would also argue that, look at other places that don't have what we've already achieved. We're the 7th largest city in the U.S. We are very successful as a city. Could we look at, New York City? Could we look at, L.A. or San Francisco? All these other places and compare ourselves? Yeah, we could, and there's always things to look at. There's also lessons learned, right? And as people scale, and there's a lot of the native Texans I know and grew up with, we always kind of you'd have, I didn't wear my first cowboy hat and didn't own my first cowboy hat till a year ago because my grandfather would have called me a dime store cowboy. Even though I was born to a house with a dirt floor, it's I never was a cowboy. My grandfather was last in our line. I still have his spurs hung up in my office. And, the reality is that, we've got something special here, I think. And I think that the folks that we have like Zach understand that at a core level that, is they say, if you didn't get here fast enough or whatever, the expression is. And he's out as an ambassador, and like you are in Mexico, in California, these other areas that, yes, we do need to stretch out a little bit outside of our comfort zone as Texans and say, hello world, let's communicate with you and let's be proactive. We're setting up right now in the process of setting up an exchange, our own exchange, like the NASDAQ, like anything else here in Texas. And so this is coming. What the next phase is coming. It's really what do we think is the best way to avoid mistakes is sort of more the conversation I think we're having right now than will it come, can it come? I think it's coming whether or not we want it to or not.
I want to add, before we move on, add to something that Lawrence just said that was amazing, right? San Antonio is unique. So we often fall into this trap of comparing ourselves to Austin or San Francisco or New York, all of these places, because they have a record, a history of building successful enterprises and really being on the bleeding edge of technology. But I think San Antonio is San Antonio because of San Antonio. So we can look at these other places and we can learn about what made sense for that location to be as successful and to build the ecosystems that they did. But I think we need to translate that into what makes sense for San Antonio. Just because we are missing something in comparison to another place doesn't mean it's something that we need to build here. I think we need to understand what it is that our founders need, that our companies need, that our cities need, and we need to build that. And you hit the nail on the head there. San Antonio is unique. Let's lean into San Antonio.
Amen. Nothing to add.
The part I'm going to add is most of these programming are free. This is provided from 80/20, HUB, and Proxy, Western Urban, Graham Weston. Geekdom.
Tech Block.
Yes.
Emerging Rise.
These communities are all the central focus. They're selfless leaders that are coming and giving away a lot of content and a lot of material that other places charge a lot of money for. If you want to be in San Francisco and talk about San Francisco, you look at Y Combinator. They're going to invest in you. It's a small subset group of folks that are startups. They're going to take 10%. Granted, you get 500K or $1 million now. But those are very small groups of people. The same happens in New York and Chicago, Nashville, Austin. Capital Factory is amazing, but again, it's still very small niche. They're looking for return on their money almost always. Geekdom is a small portion of that takes no equity. They don't ask for anything minus a Geekdom membership. But
which is also fairly priced.
yeah, it starts at like $200.
And there's free coffee.
Free coffee,
So
free
that's
drinks,
really
free
good.
events, free networking, and you don't get that at places like WeWork. You don't get those at any sort of other co-working places. And I've been to many cities where you go to a co-working spot and it's very boring, it's very dry, nobody's really interacting, nobody's collaborating. And San Antonio has that small, unique part. And you mentioned it to me maybe a few months ago when Fiesta was going on. It feels like a few months ago. It was much longer.
Yeah.
But you don't see that like programming even on a city and state level really happen anywhere else. Like Phoenix has fairs and they have other things, but Fiesta's a unique thing. Same thing with Geekdom and who started that with Lorenzo and Nick Longo and Graham Weston. It's a important part that has contributed to San Antonio actually growing their tech scene from Data Point to Rackspace to now so many other companies from Braunston to Jungle Disc that became
Now Nonprofits HQ.
Now Nonprofits HQ.
yes, one day. But that free programming, I think, is the core part of it. Is everybody is giving back, and they're not asking for a dollar or a dime. They're asking for that next help, the cosmic karma of, hey, at some point I'm going to need help. I'm going to need to be picked up, or I'm going to have a hard problem, and I want to come to you. And that's what really, I think, makes this community go round.
I think one of the ways that we're looking at it here is if we build it, they will come. And, here's Zach. He's maybe the first of many that will start coming. I've been hearing some folks coming from Mexico. Like we've got a Mexico City founder that was in the last incubator with Geekdom. And, that was for me.
Gendox, right?
Gendox?
Gene Paradox.
Gene Paradox. Be on the lookout.
Yes.
And so he's the first of potentially many from that corridor, right, that's coming this way. For similar reasons, probably from the conversations I've had with him is the reason why he came. So it's like, was a startup MBA? Is that what we're going to call it? I don't know, but it's like that's the program that Geekdom and Tech Block, Emergent Rise, and other leaders within our community are providing.
One thing that I'll share also, and it doesn't get enough fanfare because I think it's a bit of an assumption. San Antonio is one of the few majority Hispanic cities in the whole country. People don't recognize that. That means that there's a natural inclination, a natural leaning into minority business enterprise and tech entrepreneurs. Nobody likes to talk about it because, hey, everybody's Hispanic here, right? I'm coming from a place where not everyone is. And I also come from a place where that underrepresentation is a foregone conclusion. Because of the makeup of this city, naturally, there are more entrepreneurs and more startups that have founders that look more like me. Now, I'm nearly 50 years old, and I've been doing this thing for a long time. And the thing is this is not something that should be taken for granted. It's something that should be cultivated. So back to the community building. It's supporting those things and ensuring that you make yourself available because it's not something that everyone can do. It's hard to be an entrepreneur. It's hard to do things when people are telling you that you can't, right? So it's not a rah-rah. It's just simply to say, look, if we support each other, naturally we will all do better. And I think at the end of the day, and what I mean by minorities, I don't mean just skin color. I'm talking about, look, Venture Lab, started by someone that was interested in promoting more females in STEM from a young age. Now it's open to everyone, but those are the types of things, that's the spirit that we're talking about. I see that in San Antonio a lot. I do not see that in a lot of other cities where it is all about just revenue generation but not social entrepreneurship. That's something else to be considered as well, and I feel like that makes us special as well.
Yeah, I love that. I think, a big part of the reason why my wife and I, chose San Antonio over Austin, I'm from Corpus originally, so South Texas boy, but, grew up a lot of time within the Houston market. I chose San Antonio specifically because of the cultural components of my wife being first generation from Monterrey. Myself and my family came from a diverse background. I'm a mutt, and we found a home here with that. I think one of the things that you mentioned that was very interesting, that I think we don't want to glorify entrepreneurship, I think, because of the fact that it is hard and there is going to be failure. And I think for me, the way forward to get through and grow as a city, we're going to have to basically increase two things. We're going to have more failed businesses, and we're going to have more successful ones. And I think the two go hand in hand because 90% of businesses fail. So it's a hard game. But to your point, I think entrepreneurship is like the number one way to rise people up. And I think it goes beyond just any one minority. To your point, anyone that is coming from being downtrodden, if you have any category you might fit into, the best way to get out of that is to fight your way through in entrepreneurship. And it's why something I believe strongly in giving back time. I've done like huge, big things in my career, and that's why I love mentorship so much, because I feel like there's an opportunity, like through that kind of volunteering, that I can do so much more help than anything else. But I do try to, I mean, people will sometimes call me out because Geekdom can be very positive and optimistic. And so sometimes when we're giving the talks at the end, I'll hit with like, yeah, and you might fail, and it comes across as harsh, but it's kind love too, and that might be the outcome. I can tell you from experience, I've gone down that path. I've had failures with massive collateral damage in my life, and I've had, just miniature failures of things where I was right completely, but at the end of the day, it was just the wrong time for things, which is why we always talk about the pivot, making sure you're hitting product market fit.
That's such an interesting point too, because as we're building, San Antonio already turns out so many companies and entrepreneurs and shows people that are already connected in the system or have found that it's available, that you can build something regardless of where you come from, regardless of what your background is. You can build something that can be successful. But I think a lot of what, isn't necessarily taught in our current programs and as we're building these companies are that it's hard. Entrepreneurship and starting a company is probably the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. On days, it sucked. It really sucked. You're trying to figure out how you pay your personal electric bill. Then you're trying to figure out what your runway for your business looks like. And then you're also trying to figure out what networking event you go to so you can eat that day, right? Because there's usually food. And so all these things that have to kind of go into building these companies. And I think we need to be honest. We don't want to scare people away from building a company, but the worst thing you can do is, have people have this glorified idea of entrepreneurship, like what you see on Shark Tank or you see on the TechCrunch articles from these YC deals that come out, and then they get slapped in the face with the reality of what it is. You're going to be fighting against almost every odd that there is, right? You're going to have to prove that what you're talking about makes sense and that you are the person to execute on that. And then you're going to have to actually execute on that. Well, 9 out of 10 people are telling you, no, this doesn't make sense, I don't understand this isn't for me. But you do it for that 10th person that says, wow, this makes sense. When we first generated revenue with Nonprofits HQ, we were running our beta program, and we weren't charging subscription fees or anything like that because we wanted to iron out the details, but we were collecting a small markup on transactions that were processed on the platform. And so the first time somebody actually paid us for what we built and all the hard work, we got in, it was 33 cents. It was 33 cents of revenue, and we were so excited. I left my job making $500,000 a year as a software engineer, and I was so excited because we made 33 cents, and now every year,
It's the same.
Now every year we have the 33 party because that's where we started, and that was so exciting and so rewarding. We built something against all odds that somebody said, wow, this makes sense, this is really cool. Here's 33 cents. And we just went from there. But it's really hard, but I think that's where we can lean back into community, right? A lot of our first customers were people that we knew, were people that we met, that we understood what their problems were and worked with them to create technology solutions to solve them. And I think we need to lean more into community. We need to talk about how hard entrepreneurship is, not in a negative way, but in a way that can move people forward. And we need to think about sustainable business models, right? We have not raised $1 in capital. We kept building, and we got like resources from Google. Like, they still cover a lot of our infrastructure costs through the Google for Startups program. We won the pitch competition at Geekdom, which was $20K in, and things like this, right? But we need to start thinking about these companies that we're turning out, making them self-sustainable. You're going to have those edge cases where what you're building is super capital intensive. That's always going to be the case. And in those situations, you have to change that approach. But 9 out of 10 companies or 9 out of 10 ideas are just refinements of something that already exists, right? And you can build on that, and you can refine those processes and expand on those very quickly by yourself or within your community, right? But we need to start generating revenue as quickly as possible. Even small amounts of revenue, like 33 cents, right, sets us on that path to building the rest of what we're building.
The game is basically get revenue or die, realistically.
Exactly. And when we're talking about solving these things like the Startup Valley of Death, which has been a really hot topic that a lot of folks are working on here in San Antonio, like, that's one of the paths that we have to get across that bridge, right? As entrepreneurs, it is our responsibility to find that revenue. If what we're doing is not working, we have to pivot. We have to do something else to find revenue in, even if it's a different stream than we anticipated. And I think community and being realistic about what that looks like is a good first step.
And to me, that's a part of why I love the Boost podcast, and I appreciate again for y'all letting us, go on. Boost FM. And SA New Tech, we see as partners in that, going forward as well, because we see it as a way to elevate this conversation that we think we need to continue to have, and that no one's coming to save us, right? Like, revenue, is not there's not going to be a bunch of money coming in until we have successful founders here in San Antonio that have the money to reinvest back in all the niches we need them to continue to grow. Because we have places that we do, right, where we've had founders that have had success and that invest back. That's part of the challenge. That doesn't cover it like you might be just a random startup that you have no investor for here, right? So that's where you got to go outside. So I think until we break through, where we have enough failure, like to Zach's point, we need revenue. Like sell.
So 2 parts here. The first one is that the reason why we started the Boost was to allow startups to come and make infomercials, more or less. Have those clips, go share them on social media, look important, and be able to have something that they can tout and say, hey, they're going to go build their personal brand. I've talked to every single founder that I've mentored through the program. You need to build a personal brand. You have to be on LinkedIn. It depends what you're doing. You can be on X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it. It's Twitter. Or it might even be Instagram. There's fitness companies. There's fitness folks that come in there. There's restaurants that come in there. And it's, hey, build a personal brand. Make sure that if you fail, you have to be ready to pivot. And if you're going to pivot, you're going to have a network of folks that you can turn around and not be ashamed to say, that project failed. And I think that is also part of it is there's a glorification of the success. Look, you guys are all successful. I've done well for myself too, and it's something that nobody really talks about is their failures. There's been so many things that have gone wrong in a business, or cash flow problems that you're trying to address, or even loans that you're coming up on, and how do you pay for it? It's an additional loan, or you go get outside funding, and now you've got investors. There's a lot of that, and kind of ties to the second part is, how do we support those folks and kind of air those parts of the community out and say, hey, this is not always bad. There's many a failure that you're going to do it. Don't have an ego. Don't worry about it. It's part of building, because everybody talks about that hockey stick, but the part of it is there was maybe 6-7 years of building before that hockey stick happened.
Yeah, I think some of it is through, the Boost. It's through SA New Tech, and it's through, I know Matt also, plug his show. What is Matt's?
Matthew Duke, the South Texas Business Board.
Yeah, he also has a great program as well, where we're all trying to provide that visibility to the community as a whole. So some of it's a platform where folks like y'all in our community here today can continue to come out and to listen to what businesses are doing and provide that feedback, in many respects, and provide the visibility and share it with your network and things of that effect. And I think through, like SA New Tech, one of the things we're we're also doing is, as folks are coming up, like our talks are somewhat like a panel format where we're letting people give a pitch, essentially, like taking a capability presentation and putting it into a conversation. As part of that, like as folks that know how to have a commercial conversation, we're saying, okay, well, this is how you talk to like sell your product versus how you talk to an investor to probably pitch your product, which we have a lot of support in our ecosystem for how to pitch to investors. But besides, Matt's, y'all's, and us, that's the first three kind of out, the gate trying to help build community around. Let's have a conversation about what your capabilities are, what you're trying to sell, and who you're trying to sell, and where you're trying to go. And that's one step. I mean, obviously, the other part of it's going to be where founders need to focus in on that.
The one thing that I'd share is, I think in general, the conversations that Leon and I have had, and we've done plenty of websites, we've done plenty of, marketing materials for founders. And look, the fact of the matter is, most founders don't have it figured out. They don't know step one about what it is to run a business. We just had a show earlier today where the founder said, I don't know how to run a business. I know how to get my idea out there. I know how to present it. But now what? Right? So don't feel like because you haven't figured out how to do the sales or the marketing or the branding or any of those things that are beyond the idea, right? Beyond just the platform.
That's it, to beyond the idea, because that's what Geekdom is, right?
Right.
It's
Exactly.
the idea. How do you get beyond the idea to where you're commercial phase?
Mm-hmm.
And to your point, marketing, sales can help, especially it gets beyond sort of that early idea stage where you're just conceptually putting together a lean canvas and maybe a pitch.
Exactly. And many times, I mean, we've donated our time, expertise to just simply get
And
folks
money.
over the hump. And money. That's true. I think the thing is don't be afraid to ask. I guess at the end of the day,
Yeah.
even if you need guidance, look, guidance is free. Opinions sometimes, everyone has them, but very few people will give you the help that you're asking for. So I think that's the piece. Take the opinions of the people that are willing to roll up their sleeves and help you actually address the issue.
Yeah, there's many folks in the community. There's some of them are at Geekdom, some of them are at Tech Block, some of them are at Launch SA. There's so many.
Others at Emerging Rise.
Yes, there's so many resources out there for startup founders, and it's nice to see, especially like during Startup Week, everybody come together from every single background. I saw immigration lawyers, I saw UTSA folks, HEB's here. There's so many. The Massachusetts Mass Challenge was here.
Yeah, Mass Challenge.
Yes.
Yeah, they originally had reached out, and we connected them with Tech Block, and they're making a big entrance from Dallas.
That's great.
And planning on staying here. So that's an indication of all the stuff that Geekdom and Tech Block have been, working towards.
Well, I appreciate everybody here. Thank you guys for coming and watching the show actually live.
Yes, thank you very much.
If you guys want to ever subscribe, it's YouTube, it's this podcast, it's all of that. We're at Geekdom all the time, so if you want to be on the show,
We're also
come talk
talking to the
us.
digital audience later.
Yes.
Like,
Yeah.
comment, subscribe.
Yes,
right.
I'll record another little block for that. But thank you everybody for coming, and then thank you guys for joining us.
Thank you, Joe.